not necessarily there, but.
I could tell you, I think they did form a ship.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'll call our meeting to order here. It's our regular work meeting, and the time is 6 o'clock. We want to thank you for being here. Let's first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Williams. And after that, Councilman Che was going to say the prayer, but he's not here yet. So if he's not here, Councilman Bringhurst, will you handle that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please follow me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for all that was done for us. Thank you for this wonderful city which we live in and the opportunities which we have to serve and to be able to be a part of this wonderful community. Father, this time we'd ask that thy Spirit will be with us, that as we discuss items on this agenda, that we'll be able to make decisions that are the best for the whole. We ask that thou will bless this valley with the moisture which we need as we are in desperate need. We ask thee to guide us and direct us and give us the counsel that we need and to help us to make those decisions which will help us prosper and be the best for this wonderful place in which we live. Father, we ask, we pray for these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, next item, opening comments, but none were signed that I'm aware of. Next item, request for statements of belief. Does anyone want to make any statements of belief? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next would be approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda unless there's some changes.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one, disclosure and declarations of conflicts from council members. Does anyone have any conflict that they need to disclose at this time? All right, let's move on to our city department reports. Ash Creek, do you have anybody from Ash Creek yet? I don't see anyone here. They're not. Let's move on to our district. He's not here either. I have something to say about that briefly, though. Everyone heard we recently passed an ordinance that said no fireworks except in the park area. Then Hurricane and Liberty passed an ordinance that said no, it was an outright ban on fireworks. So the fire chief then called us and said, hey, Tony Bill, will you reconsider? Because they're deeply concerned about fire hazard that these fireworks have. So we did adopt an ordinance on an emergency basis to ban all fireworks. So that was the plan. And that's what carried through the 4th of July. However, I met the sheriff's department this morning, who will be the ones that will be doing the enforcement. And they say, if we are considering something for the 24th of July, which is on our agenda here to discuss, that they highly recommend that we not do an outright ban, but we go back to our original plan, which is to have it in one location, because their interpretation of the state statute is that we cannot do an outright ban. I don't share that interpretation. I don't think you do either, right? But they're the ones that do the enforcement. So it doesn't matter whether we disagree with them or not. They're the ones that will be choosing what to enforce. And if we have our city code in harmony with what they want, and when I say code, I mean our ordinance here as it fireworks, they will enforce it. So there again, that request is that we make it be just that we do not do an outright ban, but one location. We can do like we did before, which is no aerial fireworks, and they will enforce that. At least he feels they will. So that's a report from the fire department. That also sort of discusses why we had that. All right, let's go to our next item. So we have Planning Commission Chair, Mr. Campbell.
The only thing I got outside of the agenda items is that we still do have one vacant seat for an alternate, and we do have a couple people, so I don't know how we fill that, if you fill that.
So you could submit that to the mayor, and then the mayor will make the recommendation or the appointment, and then the city council has to approve. That's the process. So I would suggest that you get the names to them, and then I'll have to talk to Mayor Chamberlain, because even though he's out of state, he's still the mayor. So we'll have to talk to him and get his suggestions on what he wants, if we want to take care of that right away or if we want to wait until later.
Okay.
Okay.
And everything else I'll just deal with as we come down the list.
So can I ask a question about that? So we have a number of them here where I went through and it looks like we're changing ordinances, but they're all going to be basically the same changes, right? For the
Yeah.
different zones?
Yeah, there's only 3 different ones that are different out of the 9 or whatever that is. So
So when we get to those, let's clump them together so that we can save time and not have to go through each one and
Already
realize
done.
it's the same as before. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. All right, next we have Public Works. And Lance is not here, but JD, you want to fill us in?
So the only thing I have is we went out to Anderson Junction today and filled in some potholes with some mastic. We had good luck with that last year, so we tried it again this year. We filled in most of the deeper ones. We didn't have enough to do the whole road, but we took care of the critical ones. And we just have a few asphalt patches from water leaks to go around town, but we had an issue with our dump truck. It lost the transmission again. So that's something that we're going to have to discuss at some point. That was pretty much it. Any questions?
I've got a couple of citizens concerned with grass around the pickleball court. Sprinklers are coming on, but they're not hitting the grass. We've got some trees dying. So if you get your guy, make sure they're just checking that.
We had a fuse blow on that timer, and we figured out the issue, so that should be fixed.
All right. Well, so those trees going to come back? Or are they just gone forever?
I hope they come back. The pine trees might be gone forever. I don't know if there's a drip system to that one, but I'm trying to fix the one that's in the rocks.
Taking care of that's good. Okay.
Hey, just because he complains a lot, the trees by the entry sign on the south look fantastic. Thanks for cleaning those up.
Yep, no problem.
See, that's
just taking
honey and bees,
complaints.
buddy. Honey and bees.
Hey, is that, speaking of that, though, there was one tree that looked pretty dead. Is it going to make it?
I don't know. I'm not.
I already said he replaced those.
I think Lance tried to get hold of him. I don't know if he's ever actually made contact. I know the ones up on the heights, we had a leak up there, and we fixed that too. Those should all be back to what they need to be. So
You still have his contact.
I do. Yeah, and I
See if you
give
can
that
get
to
him.
Lance and told him about it, but yeah, okay. Next, let's see, hold on, Ken, we're gonna have you go last, okay? So, Pete, you have anything you wanna cover? And, well, never mind, we already covered, I was gonna talk about the fire issue, but that's okay.
It's going to come up. It's going to be on there's an agenda.
Fireworks, yeah. Okay, Kent.
Great, thank you. I would encourage all of us, particularly members of the council, to look closer at our listed vision, mission statement that's in our general plan. I think we can come up with a better or more useful mission statement to give us more direction for the growth and the changes that we're anticipating coming to Tokerville. I'd also like to have a discussion, maybe more in depth in a future work meeting, about our code compliance or enforcement issues, what we need to do to have everything in place so when we do start enforcement that we can have a clear process and political backing. I know it's a human nature. Everyone wants to be the nice guy. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So that could be, yes, as long as that is clear, because sometimes being the bad guy supposedly with code enforcement, you're told to enforce something and then the political winds change and you said, well, back off because that's my cousin, for instance, and that's exactly what's happened to me before. And I was at a family gathering a few weeks ago, and it was brother-in-law's in-laws that heard that I was working for Tokerville and said, oh, wow, we were ready to purchase a house on Ash Creek. Then we looked at the neighbor, and we didn't want to go through it. So that was a case in point of evidence how anyway, how one, treats or updates their property affects their neighbors. So we, as much as possible, it's best that we have a clear vision or standard for the community. We need to kind of determine what is our minimum maintenance that we're going to enforce Are we all going to live at a certain standard or another standard? That will help tremendously with the morale of everyone involved with code enforcement, because at least the most code enforcement officers are in the career for just a few years because of issues such as this. So I've talked with the sheriff's office when it comes to prosecuting violations, and talked with Enterprise City. They both suggested that we have a city prosecutor in place. So when we bite, there's actually some teeth in place. I've had some experience with code enforcement where we worked very patiently with the property owner for months. And unfortunately, her violations totaled up to $7,000. We actually had a search warrant on her property, when that was sheriff's deputies. So we were very patient. We sent the collection to the county attorney's office, and they did nothing. And so I guess the question is, what message does that send to the residents, to the employees, to all involved? Why go down this path? It's kind of like being a parent, be careful what you say, because we need to enforce what we say, or our credibility goes out the window. So that's what I'm trying to get in line, that we be in step as staff and elected officials and the public as much as possible before we start biting, so we know what we want to fix.
A process of, hey, this is what I would project. Like, hey, we're going to give so many warnings, and then this is the next step. So that we're looking at a document and say, okay, we all buy in on that. We're okay. You've had 2 warnings. This is the next step.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had that for us, we could feel comfortable approving it or making modifications to it, so that we had direction clear for everybody, because there's none of that.
Yeah, I've reviewed our current code compliance or enforcement ordinance, and I think it's fairly good, but maybe we were lacking this step of a city prosecutor. Could actually, when it comes time to collecting the fees, it's kind of like the sign. You can't reserve the reservation. You have to actually follow through.
There's another element that my conversations also with the sheriff's department was that for those codes that we want them to enforce, we need most of ours. I don't think they do. I think it's all civil. Is that right, Heath?
There are a few areas in our city code where the violation of which is criminalized. But the vast majority we have a catch-all provision that says any violation is a class 2 misdemeanor. Just so that everyone understands, if a sheriff deputy pulls someone over or arrives at an incident and cites them for a violation of the Utah Criminal Code, then that matter gets referred to the county, and the county prosecutes that, because the county is charged with enforcing the state criminal code. If they arrive and they cite them for some violation of town or city ordinance, then we have to provide our own prosecutor and prosecute them. And the Washington County Justice Court will allow us to prosecute in their court. We probably would need to have an agreement with the county. I just did that with Virgin, and we would need someone to be hired as the prosecutor to handle the prosecution. There are several. The county attorney doesn't care if his deputy county attorneys moonlight and work night jobs prosecuting for municipalities if they want to. There are a couple of them that are doing that. But that would only be if it is a criminal violation of city ordinance, not a criminal violation of the criminal code, and that could be a lot of things. And that's just not traffic. There are any type of thing that constitutes a crime, and they're cited for it. They'll be prosecuted by the county attorney's office in the Washington County Justice Court. We have, on top of all that, we have a civil code enforcement program here in the city where they can be cited with it and given a fine. They have the right to appeal it, and we need to discuss whether or not we want to go back through and be more specific. I've had the discussion with the county attorney's office whether or not they think that our general criminalization of infractions of city ordinances will work, and their preferences is that we specifically go into certain things. For instance, business licensing. Operating a business without a license, we can make that a crime. Okay? If we want to, and make it a Class B misdemeanor. However, we cite someone for it, we're going to have to prosecute it and pay a prosecutor to do that.
Okay, these people,
Yeah.
but when it comes time to the enforcement and striking, are we in place to do that now, or do we need a city prosecutor before we start that?
Would parking in a no parking zone that citation and fine. Citation is not a criminal citation, it's an infraction, and it would be a fine. If they want to appeal it, they would appeal it to our under our appeal authority code enforcement ordinance.
So my understanding is the sheriff's office could enforce this no parking, but they'd have to track down and actually give the violation to the property owner or to the owner of the vehicle, right? Okay. Some other issues we're looking into with building inspections. We're anticipating quite the surge that will take place in the near future. So we've been talking with a group that does building inspections, Schum's Coda Associates, and they're willing to give a presentation before the council at next month's work meeting. And that's something that we're looking into.
Discuss some stuff, or are we just getting, I'm just curious. So we've got it. I'll bring it up later.
Let's see some other issues. Well, as far as communication between staff, council, and the mayor, I would encourage us all to have as clear communications as possible. If a member of the council is meeting with somebody individually, or to ask if you could appraise me of that meeting, and if all possible, I could be present so I can have that communication between all members of the council so they have the same information. That would help tremendously between communication with.
And let me just say something. We all want the same, but it takes a little bit of time to adjust, right? We haven't had a city manager before, so patience if we forget along the way would be appreciated.
You bet. And we're also looking into some of our policies regarding vehicle use and cell phone use. I have a new cell phone number. If you hadn't caught that number, I can give that to you, and you're welcome to call me anytime. It's, of course, 435-922-8039.
Last four, Nick. 039.
8039. And then we have an opportunity to apply for a couple of grants. So we appreciate your thinking caps on how we best utilize some of that funding that can be used for water, sewer, affordable housing, public health. One grant is through the American Rescue Plan Act. The city is scheduled to receive about $200,000. They'll receive about half of that this year and half next year. And then there's a matching grant of $50 million from the state you can also apply for. And then there's some new legislation that is done there in the state. One of them is House Bill 82, which essentially allows for internal accessory housing units. So you can have somebody in your home, you don't increase your square footage of your home, as long as they're renting for at least 30 days or more. It's not a short-term rental. That's the general gist. There's a few details that come into play. But that is an intent by the state to intervene to address affordable housing.
Basically, that's single-family dwelling zoning with a rental in the basement or upstairs or somewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the cities can exclude certain areas of their jurisdiction, up to 25% of the residential property can be excluded. So those are some of the details.
Has that been, that's been proposed or it's been signed?
It's been signed. So that's what I have for right now that's not already on the agenda. Discuss further.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to our next agenda item. Item D, public report at this time, if they'd like. Yes, that you move in your promise, 3 minutes.
I'm DC Young. I'm at 1195 South Westfield Road. I have a question. Earlier tonight, you said we want to look at the ordinance we want to enforce. My question is, do we have ordinances that we don't want to enforce, and why are they ordinances? Which has been a constant gripe of mine. But I'm here actually to talk about the road striping. I'm not an impacted person. I didn't get stripes in front of my house, and it doesn't make it a difference either way. But my opinion is the thing that we did actually complicated the matter to the extreme, because the speeds between Lake and Grassy Lane are now faster. Because we didn't put a restriction in there, we actually opened the roadway up by doing so. We need to establish a 11-foot road and a little bit of a parking area, because otherwise we really abusing the rights and privileges we have to be neighbors and have to live in a city where those kinds of things are allowed for a long time. Sure, we need some restrictions. But what we've done now is much better. I don't think I'm alone in that. The other thing is, I think the planning commission has done a good job of trying to get our ordinance squared away, just to live by the ordinance. And I hope we'll continue with that process. I think we had on the planning commission, they're doing a good job of pointing the area out. And I'm sad to see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was here the month before last, asking about having that gravel lane paved, and I was able to get here last month. I'm just one person, but there are 6 candidates that don't have short lanes. Parts that actually dry. And they can't get these things, so they ask me to do stuff for them. So I'm getting that extra money, and that we will get that portion of the ground main paid. It's a short area, but there are 6 lanes including that. And we noticed that Barely, it's just been the period. So, you don't understand that. Understanding is that it would be a lot of time on new work until the old work is not caught up. And, West Edge Street Drive is dedicated city street in the city. And the residents who live there, they pay for the gravel, and spread the gravel, and pay for it, for nothing in the city. Sewer, which we think we can help. And put the sewer around, the gravel is there, replacing. And that was back in the days when the rain was coming. It was just a muddy mess, a mess. So they, instead of waiting the evening, they just put water on the ground. So what we got now is just a rusty, muddy, not muddy, but real road. People living on the economy, the trade group, every street in the city has been paved at least once and then taken over all the years. We realize that there are a couple of years based in the city, like ours. We're only speaking to the ones that we go on. And in our view, the system is wish we would still be back for so many years. But we just have a hard time understanding why something like that. We feel like we're being treated like separate class citizens. We deserve a separate everybody else. It almost feels like nobody cares about our needs. And the 6 families that live there, really are families of old people like myself. And we have several times walking on that gravel, like we have to drive to the corner in order to find pavement, so that we can walk.
Well, I can assure you that no one is ignoring you at all. It's a matter of getting it into the budget. But your point is well taken, and I think it's being worked on to see if we can get that worked into the budget as soon as possible. But it might be next year's budget because this year's already been all allocated, I think, anyway. But it's not falling on deaf ears. We're going to work at it to see what we can do.
So Councilman Ellsworth, we have moved forward on this. Lance and I have started to measure it up to start figuring out what we can get done. The only thing we can improve is to what the city owns, which ends roughly at the property line where Drury's purchased, right at that corner. So we've got figures put together for that. We're working on it to go into the budget. It's not fair to make a comparison for another project that was done in town. That was paved because we had a water line break. So we, just trying to balance out that we're a little town, and so we have to fix the emergencies before we fix some of these other things. Yep. And Gene, it's a great thing you've come in and asked, because the only reason we put it on the radar was because you came and brought it up. But it is being worked on, and we're moving ahead, trying to get a resolution put together. Yep. Thank you.
Greg Turner, 263 Booker Boulevard. Before I get started, I want to spotlight on a local person. You might have seen the other day that Gail Halverson, also known as Candy Bomber, was at the Dixie 4th of July celebration. He was flown in a helicopter by our own, Diamond's own commission chairman, Joey Campbell. So, Well done. I want to piggyback on what Kent Page, City Manager, was saying about full compliance, specifically with the bed and breakfast or short-term rentals. I did a quick search on Airbnb, and that's only one of the main platforms out there, and I found a list of 12 places here in Cloverville that are illegal. We worked long and hard as a planning commission and city council to promote that ordinance, and it's being completely ignored. We have two that I know of, and three others I suspect are out-of-town owners. They might live in Pocatello. There's one purchased on Sunset recently that's a person in Hurricane, lives in Hurricane, bought a short-term rental here in Pocatello. The reason I bring this up is because, first of all, there's no city oversight. If they go in and do it illegally, there's no input, there's no building inspection, there's no fire inspection, and the neighbors won't have an opportunity to get input on what impact it might have on their property. So we're not protecting the property for those people. There's potential loss of revenue. I know it's not a loss, I mean, not much, but there is potential loss of revenue for the city license fees and the taxes that are involved. We're not getting it if they're illegal. It undermines legal, the people who take the efforts to go through the legal process, and it does a disservice by not enforcing the code. And it's just really, the big picture is a disservice to our citizens.
Thanks, Greg. Heath, it seemed like at some point, we had a conversation, and I could have it completely messed up in my mind, but that as a municipality, we couldn't go out and actively search for those through Airbnb or VRBO. But once they were reported, then we could send a citation notice to them. Is that?
We cannot use evidence of marketing and advertising on these platforms as evidence to show that they are violating our ordinance. Now, if code enforcement officer went out there and knocked on the door and someone came to and said, yeah, we're renting this, we rented this on VRBO, that kind of testimony or statement would be clear evidence. But that's what that House Bill 247 did, was just simply saying, I think it was more of an issue of First Amendment freedom of speech, internet advertising, and saying that you can't use that as proof positive that short-term rentals are going on. But I believe they are, a lot of cities who have restrictions in certain areas, they're monitoring those, and they're doing it through looking at platforms like that.
So I think, so Greg, that's something that my wife has made me very aware of as well. And so I knew that we had conversations about it, but I didn't know what the channel was to move forward with getting that fixed.
Basically, all we're going to have a problem if we let us get out of control.
Well, and the sad thing is we spent a lot of time, planning commission, council, to find something we were comfortable with, so we didn't change the atmosphere at Pocatello. And so we definitely need to move forward with that.
I appreciate your
If I could just
identify.
add, in our training, you can't use advertisement as the sole method to enforce. But once you hear about something being enforced, then you can advertise, then you can go out and find additional evidence.
Yeah, and then the fire in the Burton on the 4th of July, you probably heard someone saying that.
I'm David Pope, I live next door. And most of you can probably guess why I'm up here. I got a big line right in front of my house. And I think it's important where you mentioned enforcing code, but also we've got to remember the promises that the city council has previously made to many of the citizens in the past when they made changes to our streets. Con Avenue was one, when we went to a pressurized irrigation system, they put in curb and gutter. Parents went out of town, they came back, they had a sidewalk, the irrigation was gone, new pressurized irrigation was in. And they said, oh, we put this type of curb in so it'd be easier to park there. If you go down Con Avenue on the left-hand side, there's no parking signs for the south side of the street. That's already been in place. So allow parking on the north side of the street. A large traffic volume, large enough traffic volume going through there to justify putting a line on the north side of the street. And as far as the lines here on Old Church Road, I was informed that painters didn't stay. They weren't supposed to do it at all. And I wanted to find out from you guys if that was going to be removed. I don't mind that's where the right curves occur because that's already parking. front of my house when the city remodeled, dropped the street by 2 feet and destroyed my yard and removed any ability of me ever having a garage or being able to use my, reverse the construction to make my garage back into a garage. They did it because there was the people that were contracted to do it did a very poor job in what they did. And you see that retaining wall in front of the house. I had to put that in there.
You were paid to put that in there.
You paid, yeah, I was paid $2,500. You know what it's costing me? $6,000. I was promised equipment to use that I could use. I never got the equipment to use. So there's a lot of things that were involved in that promise, but I didn't get everything that was promised to me. But that's not why I'm here. I'm not after any more money, but I do want to know that that line's going to be moved.
I don't think there'll be any lines removed.
So that line's going to be in front of my house? And is that going to be enforced parking, no parking in front of my house?
Great questions. I think that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, because the city council was also promised me, well, we have a nice curb and sidewalk in front of your house. So that's getting, if I get enforced on that line, then that means the city council lied to me and is creating new rules and it's changing my parking rules.
So when those sound like more serious concerns than this section, which is just a public forum to alert the city council of matters or whatever it is that's on your mind. If you're wanting feedback, the best way to do that is to then submit that in writing and then request a feedback. To do it here it's difficult because it's putting everybody in a position where the only thing we're really supposed to discuss or decide on the ones that are on the agenda. But if you put that in writing, then possibly we can either resolve it that way or actually make it an agenda item and then come in and vote on it. Okay? So,
I'll do so. I've already brought it to the attention of the city.
but if you want to have a decision of the city council, then talk to one of the city council members or the mayor and ask one of us to have that added to the agenda, and we can discuss it. That's the better way. I mean, I'm sympathetic with, if the city council promised you years ago something that we're not aware of, I'm sympathetic to that. I would certainly want to hear about it and find out where it was promised, and we want to comply with that. The whole striping issue is a different one. But, okay, thank you.
I was told that it wasn't supposed to even go on the street. So,
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to come forward? Thank you.
I'm his mother, Emily Cole, and I live in 42 West Pond. And a heavy mine truck that put the line in front of our house, built the water main in the street, and it's a mess out there. Orange, things, they dug it up, it was broken, the water line was broken in the street. They cut out part of our driveway in the street. It's been up for since the day after the line. I just would like to know the reasoning behind striping our street. And what was the reasoning behind it? Somebody told me that people driving down the street couldn't see the children playing, and so it was dangerous. We have 4 children living on the line. They don't play in the street. And we lived there 26 years. There's never been an incident. Anybody being hurt on that street. If you sat on the front porch, maybe 4 or 5 times a day, you would see 2 cars passing each other. There's no traffic on that street. We're right across from the church, which is fine, and parking on the church side property. But we've got 24 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren who come for holidays. And we're not supposed to park in the church parking lot, so we do. And on the tree.
I guess
So I'm gonna have to write a letter.
maybe I can address that for both you and your son. I think the thing that might be missed here in this is that is the city's street.
No, it's mine. If you look at the property line, my property goes to the middle of the street and you.
Well,
We measured when it was, measured the
we may have a
zoning
different,
from the back,
Yeah.
middle of the street.
we may have a difference in that regard, but public streets,
I'm
this,
sorry for that.
appreciate it. Would you like me to finish? Okay. Cities, they have the right to regulate what can and cannot be used or parked on city streets. If they determine that there is a need, well, I'm speaking with regards to roads in general, not just your road. But I'm hearing a prevailing presumption that we have a bona fide right to park anywhere on any city street, and that's just not accurate. I understand you may have a lot of grandkids, and I understand that you may have parked there long time in the past, but that's not a guaranteed continued right to park on a city street. If the city and the current administration of the city determines that for safety reasons or for anything that is preferred for them that supports the health, general welfare, and safety of the residents of the city, they can pass an ordinance or a resolution or designate that this area is no parking in this street or that street. It's their streets to make that determination. And I understand you want an explanation with regards to your street, and I don't have that because I don't know specifically enough people. But that's kind of just a point that I want to make is that it's not a given inherent right of a resident to be able to park on city streets.
Anything else?
Pardon?
Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
I'm gonna put it in writing, and I want the city to show me that that's on my street. And it's what it was.
And that is the better way to do it. That way, it's all clean and neat, and you can see, we know exactly what your concerns are, and then we can provide a response to that, and you can decide whether it's acceptable or unacceptable, which is the way we have to do things, right? It's all about law and order, and we want, no one wants to trample on anyone's rights. So don't think that you're being singled out or anything like that. It's not that way at all. In fact, I feel bad that whole water line broke, but some things are just inevitable when the city is doing things, and that's just one of those that just happen and unforeseeable. But they'll get it fixed and put it back the best they can so that it's not too much of an inconvenience. But
Notice on Friday that it's happening on Monday.
well, actually, no, it's a little more than that. Notice was sent out. In fact, it's been over a year that we've been discussing the striping. And if you want to, you can go and comb through the minutes and you'll see that it's been there. We've sent out letters, and in fact, some people from other communities or streets have come to the city council meetings and spoken about that very thing. So if you were accidentally missed, it would surprise me, but anything's possible, right? But we did our best to do what the city is supposed to, which is notify everyone so they can come in and say, hey, this is a good idea, or this is a bad idea. All right, it wasn't just some willy-nilly thing. It was been over a year that it's been discussed because of certain traffic congestions in certain areas. But you might be exactly right. Again, I don't know specifically where, and that's why it's the best thing to do is put it in writing. That way we can address it and everybody's clear about what happened and what didn't happen. Thank you. Anyone else?
I hate to not get on the pink bandwagon, so. Was not intentional. Just one thing, taking it from a kind of a different direction. Because I was here during the discussions on the painting. We doing timing already?
No, I was just showing you what I pulled up. We're pulled up the cross section.
Glad you printed it so I can read it.
All right, if you would, just to keep the record clear, state your name and address, please.
Dan Catlin, 821 South Beach Street. Approaching this from a citizen standpoint on my opinion of where we should be using our taxes when we clean them for the We paid engineers to do our cross sections of our roads. I give you one color sheet. Forgive me that it's not done real well. I've been out of town. I'm only going to talk about Westfield because that's the only one I've really been that familiar. I know Peachtree and Mulberry are coming. But if we paid an engineering firm to do our cross sections on our roads, when we go out and paint a road, the citizen has an expectation, if I paid for the engineering to be done, that if you're gonna go paint it, you actually paint it to the way for the engineer.
And let me just stop you before you pick up too big of a head of steam on this one. These road cross sections are for a guide for development of new roads.
I understand that.
Existing roads are a different story, and we're talking about a striping existing roads. So if you're asking us to comply with our standards on existing roads that are substandard to the now current cross sections for new roads being built, I don't know if we're comparing apples.
No, I'm trying to bring up the point that if you have that cross section, you take that down. You're gonna go out and paint an existing road that is essentially the same as what your cross section is. I think the citizen would have a right to expect that if you're gonna paint it, you would paint it similar to what new construction would do. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying if you don't, then you wasted money having the engineering done. Just looking at it. You've got, on Westfield, you've got a 42.6-inch asphalt. You currently painted it, so you've got 2 foot to the fog line of the asphalt, which leaves you 38 points, 38 feet 6 inches. A traffic lane is not marked. Whereas if you actually went with the cross section, you'd have 9'6" on the sides, on your fog lane curve, not the curve, of asphalt, 12-foot lanes, which is more than you need for that speed limit of the road. I just think it would have been better had you follow the guidelines you're setting up for new construction. That way your citizenry at least has an expectation of what
You're only talking about the one section of Westfield, not the.
No, I'm pointing out one section, I measured all of them, but you've got cross sections that you've got engineered for all different sections.
So
Each one depending upon the which would line up with the cross section. I would just hope that you're doing that work, you're doing it for a reason for new construction. It's probably the same reason you would use if you're going to go paint an old section.
So Dan, I'm glad that you just stated what you did, because to say that wasting taxpayers' dollars is pretty,
It's
That's
strong.
that's
I
pretty-
agree.
pretty strong.
It's more of managing.
but if we go all the way back and we realize why we redid the standards and specs, this all started after that. And then it was like, well, wait, if we're redoing the roads for new construction and everything moving forward, well, let's fix the striping too, so we actually have a detail. And I can speak, Heath had addressed it a little bit, but one of the things that this was the intention, as we talked about it, that's why we waited to stripe the roads, was we wanted to have this in place, so we had everything in line, ready to go.
I was listening. to
So,
the meetings with you.
yep.
You guys did a lot of hard work to get it. So, well, I was just caught off guard when what's there came in after listening to what was discussed in my opinion.
another point that I would make too is that how you get to these cross sections and the size of the road, it's going to be based on the area that the road is servicing and trips per day. When that road was built out there, I don't think it was anticipated that the level of service or traffic that road sustained.
I agree, and with the 40% increase of what's coming out of the new construction going on to Westfield, I think that just further justifies the center lane. And the standards. So,
Center lane line.
yeah. Nice.
Thank you. And anyone else? So before you begin, I'm going to excuse myself. I have a family matter that I'm going to go to, and Councilman Bringhurst here will take over. But thank you for your time. I do
See how
appreciate you being here.
fast he left.
I don't know. You gotta ring the gavel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of
Seat,
pressure.
You can sit
Yeah,
right
slide
there,
over,
or I can slide the
gavel.
gavel.
I'm still, can I be Councilman Ellsworth still
No.
on the record?
Okay.
Anita,
Anita Eaton, South Ashby Drive. The item that I'm looking at is regarding parcel number T148A, which is
So-
not the west side of Berry Lane. It's the, it's not on there. It's on.
Oh,
Very low.
I was like, wait a minute,
So-
you got me lost.
So the water line break on Berry Lane, the staging area for all of the material that was removed from Berry Lane. Well, not all of it, but a lot of the material that was removed from Berry Lane and went back into Berry
Yeah.
Lane was put on private property, which I did get a telephone call from the Public Works Director, Spugler, and apologized profusely for not checking with the property owner on that beforehand. And I said, that's fine. I understand the need. I'm okay with donating the space for the period of time that it was used, but it needs to be put back to what it was before. And it is not. There's still a lot of rock that's there on the side.
On the side, we have the berm to the
On
north.
the berm,
Okay.
on the berm side, there's a lot of rock. There's not the berm there. There's actually there's a collar. There's a cement collar I noticed on my way today. And there is and although it's probably on what is the city property, but there is a backhoe that's still there. And I don't know if I know there was a backhoe that had a flat tire and possibly some others, but yeah, so that was just a reminder of that, since I had already talked to Woodlands about that, and it's been finished for probably about a month, anyway. That's it.
Well, so the contract wasn't to clean up that side. We pieced it out. One did asphalt, one did road base basically, and one did the pipeline. So the city's probably on the hook.
Okay.
So JD, if you'll take responsibility, make sure the backhoe's
I mean,
removed.
there's some pretty big
And I-
head-sized boulders.
And I will
down there.
apologize to Eaton's. This isn't the first time that this has happened. I think we've all assumed that that side of the road is
Well,
owned by
it
the city,
was-
and we've done it
was a
before.
problem that initiated when my family gave the ground for Westfield Roads improvement years ago. That finally got taken care of. Thank you, tiebreakers, for mentioning that, but it was already mentioned on the legal books to have that restored. But anyway, just
Perfect.
anyway.
Okay,
Happy to help the city, just
communication
heads up.
Clean it up.
And completion.
like that. JD, can you get out to that? Thank you. Okay, is that it for public forum? Wonderful. We'll move on to our working agenda. The first item, E1, discussion on vote ratification of ordinance 2021. This was the 4th of July firework ban. Is there anything that needs to be discussed on that?
I don't think so.
Heath, I think we covered that as well.
What about the next, go ahead.
And the next one is, so on to item E2, discussion on ordinance 2021, 24th of July celebration of firework restrictions. I think Councilman Ellsworth had talked about this and asked that per the direction of the sheriff's department that we would establish one location to have fireworks to be allowed. Heath, I think that you've even chimed in on this.
Are they doing that on the basis of a recommendation from the county attorney? Because the sheriff's department is not the legal division of the county, and yet they're the enforcement division of the county, and they're making a recommendation on a legal opinion, which I frankly disagree with. I've reviewed the memorandum that was given to to Governor Cox about whether the state at the state level could regulate the use of fireworks, and the determination was no, because the state doesn't adopt the international fire code. Municipalities and counties do, and we enforce it. And there is a very specific provision, you can see that in the ordinance that was passed, that we can restrict any incendiary or combustible acts or causes within a city. That is the same section that if you were to look at fireworks ban that every city has adopted, from Tremont in the north to whoever here in the south, they all cite the same section of the International Fire Code as the basis for their authority to regulate and prohibit, if necessary, that. So I don't think that it is required that we leave one space open. And I don't know what the thinking is, other than they may be thinking that if we allow everyone to go in one place, then we won't have to go out, and likely the infractions will be less elsewhere or less to police. I don't know what that is, but I just frankly disagree that we don't have the authority to regulate.
And I think we probably need to just have, if you wanted to call the county attorney and then find out what that, because I believe Councilman Ellsworth mentioned to me that that's where the direction would come from from them to the sheriff's department on the enforcement. And then we'll be able to make a motion on that in 2
On
weeks.
the 21st.
Yep. So perfect. So we'll know. Any other discussions on that item? All right. Item E3, discussion on conditional use permit application submitted by Brian Beto for an overheight garage on Mulberry. Do you, staff, or anybody have comments on this?
I can tell you better.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's fairly simple. I think it's 26 feet is what he's asking for, maybe another additional 3 feet with the cupola. The back of this property is got an 18-foot cut, and it's the new SRC development that's going to be behind it. So behind it is uphill, 18-foot cut, so you're really
Joey.
going to see that.
Because of, he's going to recess that down.
It's
to
already,
what the-
it's already cut down. It's already.
So
So what's our height? 21 feet on a detached building? Is that what?
35 is the conditional use.
Okay.
Yeah,
18 feet.
18 uses per foot.
So
Okay.
Brian was unable to be here, he was on the phone, but I listened to it.
Oh yeah, you're welcome to set that up. That'd be just fine. So I believe that we've had this come up in the past, and what we ended up doing is we left that in so that we had the ability to approve it
Right.
in this meeting versus just say everybody go to 35 feet, right? Because there was reasons why it was there. And I think Joey, what did you say the overall height was?
can't exceed
I-
35 feet with the conditional.
Yeah, 35 with a conditional use. You're not even
Like the
close to
highest
that.
would be with 29.
Okay, so it'd still be under.
So 18 is the restriction right now, but the right to by conditional use go up to 35.
Yep.
The
Perfect.
only question that kind of came up in this is that conditional use is usually reviewed every year, but in this case,
It's a one-time.
Yeah, it's a one-time deal.
Yeah, it is.
That's a good point.
But
And I
we need to
think,
change that from a conditional use to something else, just a one-time. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, it would be a variance, but then it'd have to go to our appeal authority. I don't mind it being referred to as a conditional use permit because with the changes in state law, conditional use permits, we're not supposed to make them short-term and renewed and reviewed. They are now made it very clear that usually conditional use permits, the use that is permitted by that permit is perpetual. And
perfect.
Makes it easy. Yeah.
Perfect. So I don't know if there's any other questions, council. All right, wonderful. Let's move on to item E4. I don't know if he wants to listen to all that, do you?
This is our work meeting. We won't take formal action on it until the meeting 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I will,
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Item E4, just discussion on zone change application submitted by Maria Blanco for tax ID T7.
I had a lot of conversation about this one. The commissioners wanted me to convey to everybody that if there was a way that you could confirm that the veteran on the state, there wasn't any community for it. But there was a lot of discussion also that if the veteran's home falls through and we change this density down to 12 density.
Right.
Less density on the road. So it's, there's a lot of.
Yeah, that's the hard thing is we can't do zone change based off what it's going to be, right? So, and it happens to be like Springs Drive is probably one of our, like this could turn into Westfield Road really fast with density out there. All right.
Any comments on?
Yes.
The only reason I am is because I was in the staff meeting when this was discussed. And the concern was, again, Spring Road, because of the traffic, that it's already gotten a problem. And the issue with it being, it's already conditional use in agriculture for this building. The problem is they want to do multiple units, they have to limit it to one dwelling. if you look at the red text in there, where there's no provision for disability being more than one dwelling, I think you may want to look at amending that to where it can be more than one dwelling under the conditional use in agriculture. And the concern on doing multiple dwellings, again, on strictly a zone change, there's no commitment to what that's gonna be. So the minute you open it up to multiple dwellings, if the stated purpose calls for any multiple dwelling can go in there, which I don't think that road is really capable of doing.
Well, that, it absolutely isn't, and we have a single access into this location.
Which like the number of dwellings doesn't meet, there is enough, it's below that standard, I think 35 structures. So it's it doesn't meet that.
And I apologize, proposed zoning is RM2. I hate that I don't know what RM2 actually means,
Most of it's-
that we have in our code, what's that break out to, unit per acre?
Dwellings per acre.
10 per 12?
One is the, actually the 6 units per acre is from RM1. RM2 is getting, so we can.
I'm gonna tell you here, right here. RM2. Yeah, can you, RM2.
Oh, sorry, three versions. Version of Lonco is in the following piece of positive array of Lonco, yeah.
Wonderful. And I'm sorry, what was the name of it?
Virgil.
Virgil? Okay.
So, you're right, it is 10 units per acre, 10 doors.
I'm here.
And where we have as a conditional use within the agricultural zone, ability to put multifamily by conditional use. I don't know why we would rezone on the possibility of something coming, because they can come in and ask for a conditional use permit to do this. And I don't know if I would interpret even the conditional use of residential facility for disabled persons. A facility does not necessarily mean it has to be a single structure. I think that it can be a series of multiple structures if it's got some unifying amenity or theme to it, whether, even if it is shared parking or whatever, but if it's care, like nursing, skilled nursing, those types of things in the facility, it doesn't have to be one big building.
Well, if you go down under agriculture, what calls out these single dwellings. And that's why I would suggest that you actually change that.
Yeah, it was brought up in planning meeting, and staff said that they couldn't do more than.
Can I get a word in there?
1 second.
We couldn't complete more than one dwelling per acre under ag, even in conditional use. So there is a way around that, that was brought up and suggested.
Virgil, what did you want to add?
In our present plan, we have parking for 38 cars. Yeah. In our plan, we have parking for 38 cars.
Okay.
So I'm missing it because I'm reading conditional uses under the ag zone, residential facility for elderly person and residential facility for persons with a disability.
Scroll down
Okay.
under physical restrictions.
Okay.
That's where the.
Per lot. Yeah, there could use to be.
These are for disabled veterans.
Yeah, understood. But yeah, that's being highlighted. If that would say unit or dwelling unit, per dwelling, or one dwelling per, that needs to be.
I think we've ran into that before where we have that one dwelling unit and you have 15 acres, right? And I think part of that was to eliminate the ability to do those, we had that issue with subdividing. Right, they would go in and they'd put multiple units on it, and now it's subdivided because it was done this way. So I think that was part of why that stayed in.
So, why couldn't
Hey, Virgil, can you mute your phone so that we're not getting that feedback? Thank you.
How many acres is this? Is this parcel?
2.6, so 20, I mean, we're talking about 25 units. Anita? 1.9.
So you couldn't even subdivide it into two separate 1 acre lot, 1 acre ag lots and have two buildings under the way our ordinance. That's a good catch, Dan.
But I think even with that, I'm not even so much worried about the amount of buildings. I'm worried about the location and the access issues. We have Springs Drive, just not a good.
Yeah, so whenever we're analyzed, we have a lot of discretion when we're considering a request for a zone change. We need to look at a couple things. First of all, we need to look at our general plan. What does the general plan identify for that area? Is that type of density, is it contemplated there? Second of all, we need to look at whether we have or contemplate that we will have the municipal infrastructure to provide service to the use and density that is allowed under that zoning. And if we don't feel comfortable with that, we have the discretion to deny the zone change request. We don't have that. Zone changes are completely a legislative function, and when you're lawmaking and making that, you can just say no. And it's hard to challenge.
Anita?
I was looking at this prior to the planning commission meeting, was gonna bring it up then, hope that somebody in planning commission would have brought it up. The general plan, you did mention the general plan, and the general plan, it does specifically state no spot zone. And so this would become a spot zone in order to have that type of zoning in that location. I'm not opposed to what the function is going to be. I think that's great to have a veterans home that utilizes, regardless of age, those who have served. And but it does not fit within the general plan. If we were to spot zone this one, then you spot zone something else and something else and something else. And so that goes contrary to the overall plan of the city.
So I would rather see us keep it ag and work on amending the language about units so that it can be a conditional use in the ag zone. Let them come in and apply for a conditional use permit rather than a zone change. And then at that point in time, if we want to approve it with any and all conditions we want to put on it, restrictions and requirements for parking and landscaping and screening and all the different types of things you want, I think that would be the better way to do it, is to keep the zoning.
The other thing that came up is that it's like a 5 to 15 year plan. And at that time, then you're stuck with, well, you don't know if it's going to be everything. But after that is complete, and let's say the contract cancels, then now we have a high density building on it. So it's not under conditional use also. So
And that's one thing that
discussed a lot of this, and I think if we took the veterans out of the equation and somebody set up big enough apartments there, I don't think it would have met the demand, would have met the criteria.
and kind of where I struggle with this too is I look, we have that youth home that's right to the south of it. In so many ways, it fits perfectly with what's gone on. We have that youth home, we have this, we have the Turners who have the reception center. There's a couple, and then we have the other reception center down before we get to those residents. But everybody that goes out there has to drive through the little residential area. And shouldn't throw Turners into non-residential, but they have that there. It's Huntsman. Sorry, thank you. I can't remember everybody's name. I need it. Council, any other thoughts?
I don't.
Fine.
I'm gonna be curious how you get parking for 39 vehicles
On 1.9
on
acres.
1.9 acres and still have footprint for buildings unless you're gonna go straight up in the air.
We didn't see anything about parking. We did see a little bit of a site plan, but they talked about a shovel service.
Well, I would like to make a comment that the veteran summit has nothing to do with it. You're strictly looking at the zones you need and what the possibilities of what could be produced.
And are we comfortable having that type of density located on Springs Drive in the area we're talking about? That's a fun one. All right, any more discussion? Okay, council, we'll move on to item E5. Oh, sorry, Ken.
Talk about this, but they were the real falls. That's a good Oh, yeah.
Did I miss that too?
Oh, we haven't got to it.
It's coming?
It's on the agenda.
Well, that'll be that'll be an update for me as well. Okay. Let's see here. So that was Blanco. So we're on, Kent, did you want your phone back? I don't know if they're still on there or not. They are. Item E5, discussion on ordinance 10-9 agricultural zone and ordinance amending the permit and conditional use of agricultural zone. Joey, are these the items that Councilman Ellsworth was referring to?
Yeah, what was suggested because of this building is that we needed to add the term public or quasi-public buildings for essential public services to our, almost all these
All the zones?
zones. And so,
We're doing two things. We're eliminating, there were some zones that had some references to quasi-public or public. They use different terms and in our definitions, didn't have a definition for what that is, didn't have a definition for what this is. And so we utilized a singular term and we plugged it in each of our zones. And possibly we could have done it as one big ordinance, but it would have been a little bit confusing. So instead, it's a separate ordinance for each chapter. So we have one for our light industrial, one for our ag, one for our residential, one for those. And you'll see what we've done in these is, I think I'm opening the one.
on 5, 6, and 7, we actually added back in private cemeteries. So E6 and E7, we recommend adding that back in.
Because that is not technically a building per se.
We'll cover some of the stuff on there. And then there was a little bit of discussion about if someone brought in a utility, say a cell phone tower or something on private, on an R120, which is an area, right? Or our area, that's on ag. Some of that has been struck too. So that was just a discussion. Added, there should be others.
Yeah, and public utility uses.
That's the only two we changed, and then from 8 down to 13, it was just simply striking and adding that term that is required.
Public and quasi-public buildings. So we have a definition for public building. Quasi is if it is some sort of government, private, joint venture, or something that is publicly regulated, for instance, Rocky Mountain Power. They're not a government entity, but they are a public utility provider, so they would be considered a quasi-public, non-nonprofit.
I just need to so.
Dan?
This is me again, and the last time I'm going to talk.
I doubt
I
it.
won't be, I'm just watching you guys on YouTube from now on. This one, because I'm actually the one that wrote that one up. And it was strictly, when it started out, was trying to get our building, the government facilities and quasi-government facilities in each of the ordinances with the same verbiage. What wasn't originally intended in the ordinances that I've identified, Ken, and you can to take those out of those ordinances. The reason I did that and wanted to leave those in is on a farm, you can have a private cemetery. You can try and get a conditional use for that. Whether there are any in our Tocqueville or not, I don't know. You can have a private park. somebody can put a private park in and allow the public to it. So I think those should have stayed in under the conditional uses, where a private person could do those. I think our intent was only to address the public portion of that. And not
I'm
take
trying to
away the
figure
right
out
of
which
private.
zone are you talking about, Dan? Because I'm looking, for instance, right now at the first one that we came on, which is the,
Yeah, 9A3, that cemetery in it. Currently.
are you talking residential zone? You added it back in, Joey.
We have to back in private.
Private cemeteries. But the only thing that was struck was public parks, recreation fields, and public swimming pools, because that falls under the definition of a public or quasi-public building.
But we also took out cemetery under 10.9A, 10.10A, 10.10B, 10.10.2 for minor utilities and parks.
Which
I
zones?
highlighted all those.
You're using numbers. Which zones are we talking about? I've got that, but I don't know what zones these are.
Okay, if you go to,
9A is residential, 9 is.
right. So if you go to the city ordinance, it's to
Just refer to your
Agenda.
agenda, and that's, so if you look in 13, it'll tell you about 10, 13 is manufacturing.
So you want to have private cemeteries in a single-family residential zone?
I think if somebody
That's where
has
ours is now.
residential property and they want to apply and meet all the state requirements and they want to build on their property, currently they can do that. You're now going to make it so you don't even get a chance to apply to it.
Yeah.
My wife's family has a cemetery on their farm, so that's part of the reason.
I can get it in an agricultural zone when it's a large size lot, minimum lot size is large enough.
You can always deny a conditional use. I don't want to try and capture everything on everyone. But if you're requiring them to come in and apply for conditional use, you can always deny it. But you want to take it out of everybody's purview to be able to apply.
Well, but there's a state law in Utah about cemeteries and the internment of deceased.
Yeah, health department and all the others, I agree.
And generally, as a municipality, we provide a singular location. I don't know, it just seems to me to promote the opportunity in residential zones
Well,
and multifamily residential zones seems,
I was just going with, when we originally started that, our only intent was to go in and take care of the public, the government
sure.
part of it.
But while we were cleaning it and I was reviewing it, I'm like, why are we allowing private cemeteries in residential zones?
We can allow them to- I'm just saying,
We
I'm
put,
just saying,
I took it out, they put it back in,
I'm just
and I'm
saying,
fine with that.
you can only get some people to fight those tonight.
So, just a clarification, my understanding of the state law, the conditional use permits, is it's assumption of approval. You have to be very, it's really hard to just not have a conditional use permit. Because almost always you can find some conditions to allow. That's the mindset of the state.
Yeah, we have a burden in denial of clear and convincing evidence, and so we have to have something quantifiable more than just saying, we don't like it. We have to have some specific reason that is injurious to health, safety, and general welfare of residents. So I don't know if I want to put a presumption that it's allowed and have us having to fight the battles if as a policy matter, we don't want to have it in our residential zones.
Councilman.
We already do have one.
What?
Right behind one store, up against the mountain, buried in 1910. Headstone's still in
And
How is the city different?
Very carefully.
well, it's very hard, and we're supposed to, under the state code, we're supposed to keep records of all burial plots within the city. And, you know, when people can just, and I understand they should go through and get all the approval and processing and everything like that, but what if they don't? And it was a different time in 1910, and I just,
Well, I was just pointing that out.
No,
It's-
I'm sure there's
We
pioneer.
only found it a
So-
couple of years ago.
Oh,
Unless you're going to do enforcement, it's a new
Yeah. Council, any more comments or concerns on, let's just go,
all the way.
it's really at 5 through 13.
It applies to all of them.
Yeah,
The only ones that the private cemetery budget was 5 through
7. And I struggle with I just can't imagine buying a house with somebody buried in the backyard.
The reason we left private cemeteries in R120 or single family is because that's what ours is zoned in. Our cemetery is R120. So we didn't feel like we could take.
But doesn't a cemetery fall back to what we're talking about, the
Under a-
public and,
So if you guys want to strike that back out of there.
okay.
I just wanted
That's-
to make sure that then
Well, I didn't notice that people parks back there. Was it put their own park?
That's an interesting thought too. Who maintains it? How does it get taken care of?
Well,
in
it's
perpetuity?
private, private.
Well, it's private
Well, I
until
worry
somebody
about
moves on,
liability.
and now we have another issue going on, and it's
She does.
on a lot. It's a land, but it's private ground. She owns it. She owns it.
Parks have been struck also, parks and public and private utilities. Have been struck in there.
Well, we're trying to move all the things that, what would fall under the new definition that gets moved up as a permitted use. We're trying to strike everything and move them up from conditional uses to permitted use, so that the city doesn't have to come in and ask for a conditional use permit to put a structure for, a pump station, or put a structure for something like that. But I get it. The question becomes private parks, whether we want to allow that as a conditional use within like residential zones and stuff like that. I'd have to look at the definition of private park a little bit more to see.
Yep.
I don't know if we have a definition of private park.
Like other uses similar, so say we wanted to do something very specific, we could fall into that.
Possibly, yes.
The sentiment in the state is to actually get away from conditional uses. Want to be more straightforward and there's a limit, when they're not. That's the biggest difference.
Wonderful. Council, any more comments on items 8? Let me get them right. 5 through 13.
So just for the clarification, did you want to take private cemetery out of residential?
That would be, we're not doing it in this meeting, but that would be my suggestion. Yeah. I think I would personally, I'm one councilman, I would like to see it out of the single family and multifamily for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to item E14, discussion and ratification of city entering into a reimbursement agreement with SRC, authorizing the mayor pro tem previous execution of said agreement. Any feedback on that?
Quick background on that is that the city has to request the right-of-way from the BLM. BLM requires this NEPA study to be done. Obviously, we're doing it on behalf of benefit of SRC. We've made the application. They're requiring the study. SRC Land Holdings has agreed to reimburse us. And we got a copy of the formal agreement from the consulting company to do it. I then asked, okay, do we have a reimbursement, something in writing other than just a promise to reimburse? They didn't, so I put together in the form that we had that agreement. And so we've got on this item, or on the agenda, we have both the reimbursement agreement and the actual NEPA services contract. And to get the timing done so that it can be completed, this would be ratification of Mayor Pro Tem executing both the reimbursement agreement and.
Already been done, we just need to make it legal.
Perfect. Wonderful. Council, any more conversation on those items, 14 and 15? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item 16, discussion on estimate for Tocqueville Cultural Survey request. This is an item on the south end of the park of Tocqueville Parkway, where it comes through Litchfield's piece. We have some archaeological items that needed to be investigated and cataloged. It is on private ground, so we're doing it to be good citizens and good stewards of the land. We received a proposal from Bighorn Archaeologicals. I think, I can't remember the name of it. Thank you, Bighorn Consultant. what was the total on the bottom of that?
What's the total, Dan, on that?
3385.
560?
So
Okay.
I'd like, just so the council's aware what that item is for, they will do the study. We've highlighted and sent them the areas that we want investigated. This was initiated by a property owner calling the state contacting Clorox referring them to me and us conversing about it. So we're going to move forward with that with the council's permission to expend those funds to make sure we've got that area covered. Any other comments, questions about that?
I'm just curious that what I could find something.
Nothing, it doesn't matter.
Okay. It's from
No,
private property.
because it's private property, what we're doing is showing forth good effort, what good intent. They'll come, they have volunteered at this point. If we do and what we find, they'd like to have an opportunity to come and share with us what it is or collect it so that it can go into a museum. If you can find 3 people that do this, you can contact them.
So it's very.
It's a very
specialized, so under the single source exception. Besides, under our procurement ordinance that we have, it has to be more, that falls underneath the requirement for multiple bids.
Any more comments or questions on that? Just full disclosure, I've already asked them to move forward with this because there was a timing issue. So they have it on their schedule and they should be down there next week. So just so everybody's on the same page. Item 17, discussion on Tocqueville Parkway update. So I've got, Ken, I'm thinking these are probably yours.
Probably together, we just had an update last week with UDOT and Clorox. And they just indicated the city, which they simply said Ty, gave review alphas like weed spraying and air quality, environmental.
Perfect. I haven't even seen that yet.
And I'll be doing 2 bids, maybe.
There will be 2 bid schedules as well. The Parkway. I don't know why we're
Bids
going
for
into
what?
this. The Parkway, we're splitting into 2 bid schedules. We have an issue with receiving our Clomar and our permitting for the bridge on the south. And so we're going to bid out from, it's really from Shangri-La Drive North and from Shangri-La Drive South, 2 separate bids. They will be compiled together and then bid out. So anything else we need to discuss on that? I have not seen the air quality stuff on that.
Just any information, they're hoping to go out and get package B in December.
So B is the south end, A is the main. The A we're trying to have out before then. Hopefully even in
When do
October.
we have to have the bridge crossing construction completed to fit within the?
We have till 20, we have plenty of time.
Well, there's only certain times of year that we can be
We can be in the river.
in the river.
Yeah, so they're working on that. The other part of that is the money that's allocated. We are setting aside $5 million that will be budgeted for the bridge and the cut in those areas so that we're covered on that. And then of that money, we're also setting aside $1.6 million for construction management. So we'll be moving forward with finding a consultant to help with QA and quality control and quality assurance on the project as well.
So I guess we'll be in contact with Clorox to see what the views.
Yeah.
Then they're glad to have the next update meeting on July 29th.
Yep, and I'll be gone for that one, so I'll be meeting with them prior to that. So, and they know that I'll be out of town on that as well.
So I will forward you some questions.
Okay, I can get with you on those. Discussion on Tocqueville Reservoir updates.
Yes. The BLM has issued all the permits for the right of way and the recreation area. So that was an undertaking that's been 15 years in the process.
So Kent, with that, will you reach out to Sunrise Engineering? If that's not on your list yet, I think it's Joe Phillips. He is tasked with the assignment of the recreational side of the reservoir, and that will be on the city to work with them to get that put into place and identify what we want there. He's expecting a call. We're supposed to go to lunch next week, but we might as well, if that's all been done, we should just jump into that and get a meeting set up in Parks. Your Parks
Yeah,
Committee.
we need to talk it to the sewer district. They keep talking about a 2-inch sewer line pressurized. They said that's no way it's gonna work.
You probably have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
With the water district, and they said, well, we're probably 3 years out.
Probably by the time we're done, it is.
Probably this year, it still needs to occur.
And we have, as a city, we have some obligations like what
Yeah,
Caltrans
we have a
said.
sewer, we have to put a pressurized sewer.
And we'll want to do that.
And before,
Actually, we need to get further along that road because with what we're doing in Anderson Junction, we need to get that handled. We should probably move forward with having Alpha look at sizing that.
And then you move the pump house.
Yep.
Later.
sewer, they'll,
And that's off of us.
sewer
That's on-
district's already talked about that. They're gonna get, working on that shortly, so. All that pump station, yeah, it's pretty quick.
They're trying to get that done prior to Juniper Junction beginning construction. So they're not dealing with live sewer. Okay. So I think action item on that is on the reservoir is we need to get that, we need to get in
Yeah.
contract to get the sewer line size that's coming from the
From
RV
our RV
facility
park.
to the pump. That'll be an alpha conversation as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot bigger than what Lance keeps telling us, but it's all good.
Okay, item 19, discussion on purchasing Badger water meter software in the amount of $33,850. Who would like to speak to this? Is that you, JD?
So those are the water meters that we've been putting down. Well, we've gotten positive feedback. The master meters are failing at rapid rate. Last month we had 225 grand hand read. Other ones that failed last month are the warranty meters that they sent us. We tried to talk to Frank and them, and they said they had something, but we haven't heard back from them. I haven't heard cost numbers, or we haven't tried to contact them yet, so.
So we've gone down this road. I can tell you as a council member on this item, I'm not pleased that we're talking about expending funds when we've already tried this path. But what is the $3,800 for? Is it for meters that have already been given to us? Or is this for the meters that we've,
Yearly service contract with them, so they are in charge of like
so,
importing the meter reads in Excel.
so as a council, we discussed this. We chose not to move forward and we're expending funds that the council did not approve. Is that correct?
Master meter, we have a service agreement with them. We pay them.
Master meter doesn't matter. What I'm asking about is we talked about Badger meter and what we were going to do and the solution moving forward. The council had said we're not changing. And now we're asking for $3,850 annually on something we didn't approve. That's where my concern is. I don't care.
That's about me, so.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, JD, I'm not directing at you. This is something that, this has come up. We had direction and now we're back to this is back on the agenda with no insight on it.
Yeah.
So if this is because we got 10 meters and we put them in the ground and we need to pay for them, I'm fine with that because that was part of figuring out what we were going to do. But
Software.
Yeah.
Service.
all right, maybe that's.
We need some more investigation on that before we probably want to approve that.
Any other comments, conversation on 19? All right. I'm, Dana, was that yes?
No.
Let's see, item 20, discussion on adopting 2021 International Building Code for tiny homes.
This came about with the approval of Juniper Junction with their little tiny cabins. That came to our attention that we don't have a code in place to respect these tiny cabins. So it's been brought to it's been suggested that we adopt this appendix Q for tiny houses. So send this out for your review, the landscape of that, and that's the recommendation. Building inspectors that we adopt this few tiny houses that we can use for Juniper Junction and then tiny houses.
And I haven't read that. One of the biggest concerns we had is how do we inspect something that's not here? And it
Built
seemed
on
like,
site.
does this address that? Do we get some clarity on how that's supposed to work?
Because they're prefab.
Well, we talked about that, and I think if they're gonna build them off-site, they have to get a building inspector to come inspect them
Come
on
inspect
wherever
them.
they're doing. They have
Put
to
some
provide us with.
certification on
Yeah.
that it's been inspected and complies.
So
Just like a
that's because-
prefab home.
So Lance, so the building official, his inspection is going to be not even foundation, it's going to be the unit set with water, sewer connected to it and power. That's what I inspect, right?
So this has to do with more the ceiling, the egress.
Yeah, standard code stuff, but what we're saying is if they're built off-site, we aren't gonna be able to inspect them. So we're gonna require the manufacturer to have some third party come and inspect them to said building code that we provide them, Appendix Q, and make it, I mean, I don't know how else to do it. They have to get it done at their expense and at their, you know.
So Councilman Sipp, if we back up, like if we had an RV parked out there or a trailer parked out there, we're not inspecting anything
Yep.
with that. So there's got to be something that's already in place to certify that these are,
Well, prefab,
Right.
prefab
homes have
come with a certification, but
could or could not these tiny homes be
Yes.
certified as
well, that
well?
we can
Yeah,
require it.
exactly.
We can just say that this is what we require for, that we are adopting Appendix X or Q or whatever it is, and that we can put right in there that we're going to require if it's constructed off-site that it has to have certification that's been inspected in compliance with it.
I just don't want tough sheds, you know, there with houses in it, and our mild north wind we have in the wintertime blows a couple over.
Okay.
One of the biggest differences is whether it's a portable cabin
Right. Or if it's,
attached to a permanent foundation. So these are
Okay.
supposedly attached to a permanent foundation. Historical code.
right.
Got it. So they'll come in, set them on some type of foundation, which now we're inspecting it.
Valves that are hanging up, she's a building code.
Yes.
Yeah. They had HUD stickers on it. So
Okay.
we're asking for something similar to that on these new tiny homes. Obviously, if they were building them on site, we would have our inspector go out and inspect them. But they're talking about having these things built off site somewhere, brought in and set. And we need to know a lot like a prefab home, like a HUD certification, that someone has inspected it and that it complies with the new appendix on tiny homes.
So we've already adopted a code of the 2000 code issue with the IBC, so why would we have to adopt?
This is the 2021.
This is,
So we need to adopt
this,
future ordinance.
we can do that to all of them. I think we have, when we did that, I wanted to look at our ordinance when we adopted the uniform codes, whether we put language in there that
It
is
automatically.
an automatic adoption of the newest version or not.
And I could clarify about these tiny homes that they were built off-site or on-site.
Well, they're talking about build them off-site when they were here last and bringing them in. So if that's how they're gonna do it, yeah, I just wanna make sure that they're being inspected and they're being built up to code, so.
Perfect.
So it looks like future amendments.
Does it include future amendments?
So.
Okay.
Some of those codes, you can do them until it's 4 feet.
Yeah, that-
That went away when we adopted the uniform codes. We tried to keep it so we didn't have some certain provisions that were contrary to the uniform codes. So,
Okay. Any other discussion on item 21? Right. Item 22, discussion of possible purchasing. Oops, did I skip it?
21, yeah, that's the same as basically 20. It talks
Oh.
about, well, it talks about 2020
I'm sorry.
International Code building valuation, and I think that our code just says any, didn't that cover that?
yes,
Well,
I think it did.
Oh, do I need-
Can you throw that up?
Kent, what was your concern on that?
well, Mike, it was brought to our attention by John, based on our building inspections, that we've been only assessing valuation for a residential 1 or 2 family, $66 per square foot. And the latest building valuation last year for 1 or 2 family is $123 per square foot.
So is that, Dana, is that on our fee schedule? Or, so if it's on our fee schedule, we would just need to amend our fee schedule to reflect that. So we should,
Okay, B, I'm looking at 9-1-2, subsection B, future amendments. All codes set forth in subsection A of this section as adopted and amended by the state, together with amendments thereto in the future made by the state, are hereby adopted by the city as if fully set out in this section, with the additions, insertions, deletions, and changes, if any, prescribed in city codes, resolutions, or ordinances. It says, in addition to the body of the codes, this is C now, appendices. In addition to the body of the codes adopted in subsection A of this section, all appendices to these codes as passed by the state and as applicable shall be adopted. So we have an automatic adoption of that.
What about D? What about D? So fees.
That's city council's undervalues. Yeah, so that's what you're asking about.
Right.
Do we,
It doesn't.
why we are under,
So I guess our building inspectors, when they do evaluations, we just need to point to them that they need to be using this letter D, that we value at 75% of
International Building
and
Code.
what,
the current.
why are we doing that?
I don't know.
Because we don't want to collect money to pay the inspectors.
I have no idea where that came from.
No, impact fees are different.
This is only for
value.
building inspection.
So this is the building permit fee. Yeah, the building permit fee. So basically, we take the value stated in the application of $66 a square foot. Is that what you said?
We
Well,
have
so-
been using $66.
And now it's 100.
But the recommendation is 123. So we can do 75% of 123.
That goes up a long ways.
So that would help.
That's, what is that, 89?
100%. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, 100% of something more.
It's only Captain Obvious.
Nailed it.
That would move it to 92. That's what I think, around 90,000 at 75%.
Is there any reason, my question would be what Heath asked, is there any reason as a council that why wouldn't we just go to the 120, whatever the international business, the code says?
Evaluation, because, we're stretched on funds for paying for building inspections.
So maybe,
So I'm not sure what the.
I don't know where it came from either. It's probably something we've had. I don't know. Hope, you guys did this for a long time.
They did.
That's changed.
I inspected my home in 2003, so. So I think my feeling is as a council for what that is, I would just mirror what that is. And then as it updates, the next time that the building code updates, we update our fee schedule, pass our fee schedule and move on.
Something we gotta keep on top of. I think we can put in our uniform fee schedule per the IBC appendix.
And just, and not have a dollar amount associated with
Not have a
it.
dollar amount associated with it, and just have the staff do the calculation off of, look at the current, at whatever the current valuation is.
Don't take a discount on 75%, take 100%.
Yep. John does.
Yeah.
Or the building inspector
But
does.
it's partially based on
On square footage.
a fixed price
Yeah,
per
it's
square foot, because any builder is gonna come in and undervalue the home when they fill out the application. So now we've gone to a uniform valuation.
Take the square footage of home and you times it by that number and there's your price. If a guy comes in and puts solid gold stuff in, then the city doesn't, the house might be worth more, but that's up to the county assessors to figure that out. But we have our square footage number.
I think council, if we're comfortable with that, I would feel more comfortable changing that to 100%, mirroring what we have in the IBC, reference that in our fee schedule, and having that ready to make motion on next meeting.
Okay, so you will draw that up for.
Heath needs, perfect. And then Dana, can you make the change to the fee schedule so that we can see what that will look like as well? And then Ruth will need that on, sorry, fee schedule, and then have it on the agenda. Perfect. Okay. Now that we're back on track here, item 22, discussion on possible purchasing of software programs.
Yes. We've been doing some research on how we can prepare for the busier days. So
Building inspections and stuff like that, right? That's the.
yes. So we looked into iWorth. They have a package for building inspection and code compliance. You know, they give us a certain fee. We looked into a public works software also by iWorth.
Is that who?
They come
I'm sorry. Is that who presented to us?
Yeah, I thought that was a nice program.
My understanding is that you want staff to look at other competitors, right?
Well, we just want to make sure if we're going to go down this path, we're picking what we think's the best and not what we got sold on the day. So
My understanding from Lance is he feels pretty comfortable with taking this iWork for the public works software. It's annual.
Well, yeah, but
$5,000 at one time, $15,000. So it's.
But iWorks had different modules they build us, so building inspection, public works, they had all kinds of stuff that we could, if we're gonna buy into a system, I wanna make sure it works for building inspectors, public works, parks, everything. I wanna make sure it covers the whole. So we're not coming in 2 years, say, hey, we need another program that runs the building inspection or something. So,
They have one for public works, so
Right.
that would be, $13,000, and they have another module for building inspections and code compliance.
Right.
And that's about $9,000. We can see if there's.
So you're talking like $22,000 a year for these.
No, that's for the up
initial
front.
buy-in.
There's an annual fee and then there's a one-time.
Okay, and Ken, are you talking about like the one-time fee, and then is there like an annual maintenance fee that gives you the new updated version every time you come out?
Correct, but what I was telling you was the combined annual one-time fees.
Oh,
What's the annual fee for both modules?
The annual for the community development, which is the building inspection and code compliance, is $3,500. And the annual fee for the public works is $5,000.
So that'd be 8,500 a year.
annually that would have to spend. Does that gives you the new updated versions of the software? And does it give you technical support? Like if we have a question about how to use certain things, the unlimited technical support. Okay.
So Lance seems to think it's a pretty good situation. There's program.
Yeah, they can print out reports and inspections. Matt, do you have any idea what they're using?
The department they use was called My Inspector, which most of the municipalities here in town use. It's all online, it's pretty slick program. But saying that, we also, understand, we've also gone through several generations of software that we thought would work and it didn't work. So my two cents is whatever software we do, which is again, probably already doing this, is do some good due diligence and call the municipality and say, does it do this, does it do that, does it do this, just to make sure that what you're buying.
You might look at like My Inspector, because if a lot of the other municipalities are using it right now, if we ever get to a situation where we have to hire additional inspectors or like on a part-time basis, moonlighter, someone who will move, I mean, the Popes for a long time, they were pillars in St. George City, but they were also doing ours bills. Inspections, and if they know how to use it and input stuff into the system, then it would be just that much easier and user-friendly if everyone else is using it.
Well, what helps in that scenario is because all these general contractors, they're building other municipalities very locally, but they know what that does and how that works. And it makes it really easy, not only for them, but it also makes it easy for staff.
That's why we're all city and stuff.
Perfect.
We're a building inspector.
So, Ken, I think if you would take that assignment and work with Lance, and let's have a couple options and make sure that's a lot of money to say, hey, we're all in, and not know.
There are some other cities that we can contact that adopt these software packages.
You would do that, that'd be fantastic. So we had some references.
Brady, her price will be reflective of what's being generated from this community. So there's an adjustment, that's just because, you're saying forward and your quote bill, the price is about the same.
No.
It's what's being generated, she adjusts the price.
For like the maintenance and technical support, because they anticipate that someone like St. George City is going to have a lot more calls into their technical support and stuff like that than somebody like.
Her system does not account for depreciation of water lines and infrastructure.
Oh, does it?
Public, yeah, it's
Public
Very
works.
specifically.
Yes.
So there are some local cities that this side works for, like community development, there's Canab and Islands, there we have it. So
Have you taken an opportunity to reach out to Ivans or Canab and see what was their feedback?
Oh, I haven't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's on my to-do list.
Perfect.
And then there's some other software out there like a Grandius that they have short-term rental software that helps track these bed and breakfasts. And it seems to be pretty slick. Hurricane is the top of it. But from what I can tell so far, they want the quite quantity to justify the price for the software yet. I talked with Mayor Chambers about that, as well, they aren't quite there yet. There are a lot of nuances. Just wanted to let you know that we're looking into some software that can help us capture some of this revenue that might be escaping us, keeping track of what's out there, how many bed and breakfasts there are.
Well, and, I don't want to fault our system, but it's in a filing cabinet in the back, right? So whatever we can get stored in multiple locations is a good thing too, and it makes it easier to find everything.
How much is this short-term rental package?
14,000 for, that's a one-time fee plus the annual fee.
Is it just for short-term rentals or for code enforcement? Because I've seen some cities have code enforcement software that manages a lot of different aspects. The code enforcement officers are inputting information. City staff is, and they're tracking it, who's it's been, if there's been an appeal, who's been assigned the appeal.
They might have software for code enforcement as well.
But that's just,
Specifically for short-term rentals.
Can't say that.
And then there's a software program for development review. It's called Bluebeam. We used it up in West Jordan. It seemed to work pretty good except for my computer. And it wasn't all operator error.
So Ken, I'm familiar with Bluebeam, but only on the estimating side of it. It has a specific module for the city side of it to track and maintain and trust.
And it's fairly economical, I think. It's a $350 for computer use with that fee and $100 annual support, so it's
Very reasonable, and we can store our plans digitally.
If I'm not mistaken, Bluebeam and my inspector speak.
they can integrate. Interesting.
The collaboration.
So that might be good to have as we get more sophisticated.
Yeah. Okay.
That's another good one, software.
So let's see here.
Get more on your.
So Kent, on these items, sorry to go backwards, but from like 17 so far down, do we need to have these don't need to be on our agenda for the following meeting?
I don't anticipate
Okay.
unless you want them to. I just wanted to bring them to your attention.
No,
Maybe get some feedback,
Yep.
say,
That's perfect.
If you're going down the right road or stop or,
I think those are good. Okay, so then item 23, Tocqueville Falls update.
Yeah, we're gonna meet next week. We're gonna meet with the BLM and also with the Greater Zion Tourism Group, and we'll design a staging area. This is not a BLM property. So that's the latest. They're gonna meet.
What would be in-
Meet on, July 15th. At 9 o'clock here in City Hall.
So my concerns are going to be, staging areas are fantastic, but it's promoting part of what we already have a problem with, right? Is our infrastructure being destroyed by the amount of traffic. Obviously, we've been trying to figure out a solution. So just as you attend that meeting, I think representing the city and making sure some of those concerns are
Yes,
voiced.
they indicate that we can benefit from a transit room tax. So we're going to be working to maybe implement that transit room tax.
We already have a transit.
even if it's not it's not a resort tax. You said transfer tax is less.
So Ken, I apologize, but how does that
That's
correlate with
trails,
Tocqueville
yeah.
Falls?
Well, it just means that we get that money and we have to use it to benefit tourism somehow out there.
Oh, so is the state, because we don't get 100% of the transient room tax that is collected by the state, it's not 100% of it's remitted back to the city.
About half of it is-
They have, the state keeps some of it, and the state is saying that they would use some of that money here in Tokerville for the improvements or something, is that what they're saying?
Yeah, that's for tourism. And that's a very good question because we're getting a lot of impacts on Spring Drive.
Absolutely.
But
Well, see, we've had, well, I don't even know when it was now, it's probably been 6 years ago. We had budgeted to improve Springs Drive and we're ready to go to bid on that. We had the citizens on Springs Drive come and say, don't do it. And we took those funds someplace else. And now we're promoting, putting more and more traffic on that. There's a section of Springs Drive that, quite frankly, we don't have enough ground to expand anyways without purchasing some property from the landowner there.
I wonder if we could do something like the Marysville Falls to acquire some property and have a little city parking lot and charge a fee.
Well, something, those citizens that live on Springs, it comes back like that zone change. That's a lot of burden right there. And it's already, we have complaints. The complaints we get are generally about the amount of people driving through Springs Drive and how fast they're going.
And they are shamelessly promoting access to Tocqueville Falls through the hall road.
Yeah, that crosses to a private land, though. Now you're into private land, and whose land is across, and, that's a
But
maybe 10 year down
I think
the
the
road.
beauty of that is, though, it's about getting creative and trying to find other
Right,
solutions.
right.
None of them are easy.
Anyway, we can brainstorm about those. We're welcome to brainstorm some ideas. I would capture the benefits of all these tourists that are going to Tocqueville Falls.
Like that. I'm glad it's on here to discuss. I think we ought to probably keep that for our next meeting as well when we have the rest of the council with us. Matt, you had some comments on that.
On the transfer room tax, you would make that case for Ken. And if you would get some money back.
And that's, they have kind of a soft deadline of July 15th or August 1st. So let's see what you like to work with.
Absolutely. I think the council would agree on that. Yeah, I think we should work towards that. Wonderful. Let's see, next item, 24, discussion on landscape ordinance requirements. I'm looking at you. It's not you? All right. It's you, Kent.
Yeah, the Washington County Water Conservancy District just proposed to put forth this water efficient landscape ordinance that we could adopt. It's pretty straightforward. I think we'll have this on the agenda for 2 weeks from now. Basically says use water wisely. It's not that specific. I asked the Water Conservancy District if they received any feedback from other jurisdictions, developers. It's been vetted. We haven't received a response from them, but it seems, it doesn't seem like it's too threatening.
So we have our own landscape sections of our ordinance. Are you thinking this would be incorporated and integrated into that, or is it going to be a standalone, separate subsection?
Yeah, I haven't reviewed the detail of the current landscape ordinance, so this might be better just to subset.
Yeah, let's see if there's been any comments or vetting issues from other municipalities, but if it's not too general and it's not overly contradictory to our existing landscape ordinance.
You have a copy of it.
Yeah, I'd love this. Look, is it in the folder? It's in the folder. Okay. Oh, good.
Okay, so yeah, look at it like I reviewed it, but well, it's pretty done stuff.
All right. If there's no more comments on item 24, we'll move on to discussion on addressing for Anderson Junction.
Okay. Yeah, Dana brought this to my attention, so moving to back to the show map.
So, yeah, up in the Anderson Junction area. Somebody might put a building up on here, and there's a question whether it was Model Drive or a whole bunch of different roads.
Can you scroll in a little bit?
Yeah, whether it was Lava Ridge Road or Lava Pump Drive, they look how these lines are like, whoop. And I contacted the county, it looks like the lines, I put the grid, whatever you guys do with addressing, the grid over the top of it, those are the concept lines. And it just looks crazy, so I called the county and they said they did the best they could for lines. They could, but I guess back in the day, people just put their addresses where they wanted it to be, and they probably didn't have like underlayments and overlayments to really do effectively. So when this area starts to develop, it's going to be an address nightmare.
Yeah, and I wonder if, you know, that, I hate to spend a lot of time on that when we know that we're going to add multiple roads. We're going to go and disconnect old Highway 91. We're going to make enough changes out there that I think if we're going to make changes, we probably ought to do it all at once, because that change of address is a nightmare.
But what's pretty manageable right now, but people are going to start subdividing,
Yep.
start improving.
As that happens.
And if they say to go with some water. And
So that, yeah, well, in fact, we need to talk about that. So,
When I was the emergency manager, we had that very issue came up because we were doing reverse 911 from the county at that time. We sat on several state and county meetings dealing with addressing, and they basically came down and said, get with your municipalities, have them drop their own system, and they realized that Tocqueville was kind of crazy because of how our streets went and everything else. And they said, as a municipality, you can do the adapt to your current addressing block, but you know, it's not going to be easy. And that's what the county and the state.
well, if you're doing this type of addressing, you have to do right to and left on.
Yeah.
And the house has to, ultimately, you need ambulance, we need to know.
Oh, I know, and that was the big
So,
issue.
like, rather than hurt somebody's feelings and change their address, I would rather somebody get the house. You have to hurt address.
Right, no, and they said to leave the addresses that are existing where they're at and adapt to that for the.
But if the addresses are wrong, rather than keep wrong data.
Well, are the addresses right now wrong?
Well, this, if you can see, this 1800 north is, and this line is 19, so the 18 is above the 19, so 18 is between 19 and 20.
hey, that's perfect. I learned that in school.
It is, 18 between 19 and 20, it's always been from Hurricane.
Hey,
So, and I,
So Dana, that's not even is that the house? There's a resident that lives,
there is.
no,
a
he's
resident,
further,
And right now, their address is 1800 North Lava Ridge Drive, or Lava Pocket Drive.
but I don't think I don't think there's a resident there. I think that's the barn. So, and the only reason I'm saying that is if it is the barn, it's easy to change because the district's going to tear it down. So we need to be on top of it and start making these adjustments.
We need to develop a reasonable act.
Absolutely.
For Anderson Junction. Yeah. And of course, it is painful, like I work at the city of St. George, you're changing addresses in Green Valley, it's tough to work, but it's a lot easier to change 100 addresses than it was to.
And we're talking
change
about
1,000.
less than 20 right now.
Right.
And the one you happen to pick just happens to be a barn. But the problem is that's going to be all the way through there. So yes,
But
I think we've got to
if
fix
it's
it.
Historical data,
Uh-huh.
even if it is a barn, then it affects this
All of
guy
it.
who wants to build on this piece of property, because his
Yeah.
address has to be within this screw.
Yeah. So I think it's good. I think we just go through
If we use the past.
I don't know if, I can't think back far enough to say that we've had anybody do that, to be honest with you.
He knows the address thing. And,
Is it something that's in your wheelhouse?
then what I, we're making a county when we make changes, just so we're on the same page.
Should be accurate, yes.
Do you want, is it something we reach out to Alpha with and have them tell us yay or nay on?
Pay them this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I firmly believe that it's done right.
Well, then let's move ahead and get it fixed.
Well, yeah, before, like you say, all this new development goes out there, we need to get this straight.
Yeah.
So Kent, you're taking that assignment? That's amazing. You're so good. Thank you.
I did see him,
Not a shake or a nod.
You know, there's been some horror stories in the state where an ambulance can't find somebody because of improper addressing. And then somebody dies
Yep.
and then the attorneys start looking for somebody to sue.
I take offense to that.
You should. You should.
Never mind.
So if we don't follow their addressing, then, you know.
I got it.
Yeah, it
Someone's
is.
gotta
In the
make a
barn's
count.
further down. Can you scroll up? Scroll out. Yep.
Let's go south a little bit. Then is that the barn over there?
No, the barn's down there on the left. That's the barn. Nope, left. All the way. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Nope, just move your cursor to the left. That's the barn.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. No. Yeah, I think that's the thing to do. Let's get it fixed while we can, while we're only having to help, inconvenience 12 people or 14 people.
Well, those addresses go back to 1910. That's where the guy's buried in the backyard.
Oh.
That's right over across the street.
And then
By the way, there is a cemetery over at Anderson.
Junction.
Yeah, it is.
And you can find it, remember the sign, the Somerville sign, it's pretty close to that, along with,
Okay. That was item 25. The final item on this is ongoing staff trainings.
Perhaps this would have been better served as, with the staff, but I just wanted to let you aware that we're looking at, trainings required and desired trainings for all staff, members of the city council, just to see, where we fit with the budget. And so we can budget our time, our money, and our budget our finances as best we can. Have our office staff coordinate. So we have a running spreadsheet. I think we've sent this to you. If you have any trainings you'd like to go to, like regional league of cities and towns, let us know so we can budget for it. I think we have 17,000 budget for training and travel for this year. Last year was a really good year. We budgeted 17,000 and we spent 3.
Did we get to keep it?
We didn't spend
This
it.
goes back into the general fund.
We'll spend it somewhere else.
So is Utah County, are
Parks.
they doing that this year?
Utah League of Cities and Towns.
Are they gonna have the convention this year?
Right. You wonder, well, what's the benefit of being there in person versus just having another Zoom meeting or webinar?
Are they allowing remote attendance? Because that might be a way you can get more training for staff without having to cut into that budget for travel costs.
You can find a commission on that. That's a good question. But in year 2019 through 2020, we had a budget of 10,000 in 2018, so behind a little low. Anyway, I just encourage you to fill this out, give me an email,
So-
training you
So Kent, in the past, Dan just brought this up, but we've had training for planning commission, and we have a new commission chair. We have 2 new seats to be filled, 3 new seats probably with an alternate, right?
We're gonna start some training.
I just want to make sure there's some dollars allocated for that as well. Yep.
Well, Luau, right? Local, Utah.
5 counties? You're talking 5 counties?
Luau or something, it's done to the state.
Oh, the land use institute.
When I first started, I didn't know anything about anything, not around anything now, but I went to some training in Utah over it.
St. George.
It was Zoom, and it was good.
Okay. I think that's wonderful. Any more comments on that? Item 26. Okay, council reports. Councilman Sip.
We'll start with our parks and trails. We had a meeting yesterday. We have our fundraiser. We're moving right along with our fundraiser. Matt's been coming over to help with a bunch. Our Parks and Trail Committee spent a lot of time. We have flyers made. We have our sheets to sign up, selling bricks, pavers this year. We're going to paver at the park. So there'll be in a walkway you can read whoever donates, can buy a paver. We're still having our how do we guess we got a concert, dinner, and an auction on September 24th. So we're having it at the city park down on Center Street. I think it's just our plannings are going really well. I think it's gonna be a good time. Solid waste, we're back to looking for another manager. We can't seem to get someone to stay.
This is replacing Blair's position.
No, that's sewer district.
Oh,
So solid waste.
I got you. Doesn't go in a pipe.
Yeah, it doesn't, we don't flush it, we haul it. The sewer district, though, we do have sewer district, we did.
Just moving on.
Okay. We do have an assistant superintendent we've offered. We have a guy that is coming down from Eagle Mountain. Sharp, Goodrich. So I haven't heard if he's actually accepted the job yet. So we've met with him. We had online interviews with several guys, and we had two come down here to Hurricane, and we interviewed them 2 weeks ago. It's been we got some really good guys applying for that job. So I think we've got that taken care of. So sewer district's looking awesome. They're taking care of Tokerville like always. So that's all I've got.
Keen doesn't have to say anything. That's his shortest report. I've got nothing to report other than I need an executive session at the conclusion of this. Gary Chase is not here. Councilman Williams.
All right, nothing on trees. Cemetery, we've had a little bit of blowback on the handling of the cemetery when we cleaned it up after Memorial Day. And so looking into clarifying some of the
signs that are right by the entrance gate.
Yeah, clarifying some of the information, putting it out a little more so that people will understand. And there were some legitimate mixes up on some of the stuff, but other than that, the city did what it was supposed to do and a fine job, and as they usually do. And the cemetery looks really good. There's a couple of things that just little hiccups that I can work on taking out myself. I thought we had a fairly decent 4th of July event. It turned out to be a lot smaller than we had anticipated. Same amount of advertising that we've had before, but so I'm going to look into seeing what we could do a little bit better for next year.
How many did we serve?
Maybe 200 is all.
200. About half what we normally do.
It was down.
Yeah. Everybody, they had a chance to get out and get away after being locked up for 18 months, so they did that. And but we had a fairly decent band and a really great fiddler. So people who went seemed to have a pretty good time. So, but we'll just try to build on that for next year. And I've talked to Mr. Polk about sharing some of the information he's had on emergency preparedness, especially the stuff with fires and things that have gone on with the fireworks. But we need to be looking further down the road than just where we are right now. We need to look down the road what kind of emergency preparedness plan we're going to have for 5 years down the road. So we need to work on that. And I think he and I can see that he's the brains of the bunch, and I can pick his skull and get good information so that we have a better plan than what we have right now. Nothing wrong with what we have right now. It's just very old, and a lot of things have changed. So that's all the exciting stuff I had.
Wonderful. That's it.
Okay.
I'd take a motion.
I motion that we close this meeting and then go into a closed session for the discussion of property, land acquisition, and personnel.
All in favor?
Aye.
And staff, you're welcome to stay.
This is.
This meeting's adjourned at 8:15.
Enjoy.